it's almost like another level of knowledge. Like, because I'm a Black woman, I have a knowledge regarding racism that you are unable to access. So I automatically can know when racism is happening.
One aspect of critical race theory is standpoint epistemology. I touch on it in the book, but for any ideology, for any worldview, you have to ask, why do you believe it? Why do you think it's true? What are your reasons for taking it to be objectively true? So epistemology simply is the theory of knowledge, how we come to know what we claim we know, the sources for knowledge, the tests for knowledge, and so on. And I understand knowledge to be justified true belief. So the belief has to correspond with reality. That's what truth is. And then the belief has to have some evidence or some reason backing it up. Yeah, it's really the support in many ways for critical race theory. Critical race theory, in a nutshell, is the idea that we need to divide society by race. The race is the most important category of anyone's identity. And in America today, the white race is responsible for just about all the problems of people of color. And typically what people mean by that is African Americans and Latinos. Asians are not really included, although they have color too. They're not white. But typically the way this plays out is it's a neo-Marxist view. And instead of making class the determinative category, race becomes the determinative category for understanding oppression and who is oppressed and why they are oppressed. So standpoint epistemology fits into this by saying that those who have been oppressed and marginalized have the definitive viewpoint on what has happened to them. So this disqualifies people who have not been oppressed from having a say or having a viewpoint. It's certainly legitimate to ask people, how have you as a African-American woman or as a Latino experienced American society? What has happened to you? Have you been discriminated against? That's all perfectly legitimate. But standpoint epistemology goes beyond that and says that by virtue of being in the oppressed group, you have a comprehensive understanding of the way society works. So it goes beyond the first person, what is your experience, or what they often call lived experience, to what is the overall situation in America today with race. And it automatically disqualifies people who are not people of color from having any kind of legitimate perspective on racial issues.
Yes.
So that's it.
Yeah. It's almost like another level of knowledge. Like, because I'm a Black woman, I have a knowledge regarding racism that you are unable to access. So I automatically can know when racism is happening. Something like microaggressions, for example. A microaggression is something that would happen to a person of color that does not happen to a white person. It also is something that I know when it will happen, but you may not necessarily know, not because you haven't experienced racism, or, well, technically you wouldn't be able to experience racism, you could experience prejudice, but because of the standpoint that I sit in, my social location. My social location gives me a specific knowledge that some people cannot access. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's it, definitely. And it's true in one way and not true in another way. So it's true in terms of your autobiographical experiences. So when our cities were aflame in the riots of 2020, I called up several African-American friends of mine and just asked them about their experiences of being Black men in American society, because obviously I don't have that experience. And it's interesting, I asked about the police. And I asked one friend, do you think you've ever been pulled over by the police just because you were Black, because they suspected that something might be wrong? And one of my friends said, yes, definitely. The other one said, I don't think that's ever happened to me. And, both had been Black all their lives and were about the same age. So that is significant. And as a Christian, I want to be able to be sympathetic and even empathetic to people who have experienced problems and injustices that I have not. But where this goes wrong is on the level of formal epistemology. So if knowledge is justified true belief, we need adequate justification to have knowledge. So if we're dealing with matters of racial injustice and race relations, we need to know a lot of things. We need to know history, what happened in slavery in the United States and how much does slavery still affect the African American community. That's a historical, empirical, economic question. And it's not the case that if you're black or yellow or red or blue, you have insight into that simply on the basis of your racial identity. That's a matter of social science.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you're talking about what economic policies tend to empower groups that have been economically disadvantaged, that's a matter of looking at history and economic theory. That's not primarily a matter of, well, what do people of color think about this? It's a question of the facts at hand. Now, my favorite economist of all time happens to be an African American. You probably know who I'm going to say, Thomas Sowell.
Thomas Sowell.
And I dedicated my book, Fire in the Streets, to him because while I try to give a Christian assessment of critical race theory, I need to know something about the facts on the ground about race and economics. And I think that he has provided a tremendous resource on that. But I don't go to Thomas Sowell because he's black. I go to Thomas Sowell because he's brilliant and because I've been reading him for 40 years. And he has really informed my understanding of wealth and poverty and race and economic development and so on. So it's like standpoint epistemology takes a true insight and then inflates it into something that really leads us astray.